What's up, everybody? Welcome to this quick little vlog that I wanted to get out there, kind of in between a bunch of projects I'm working on. And before I go any further, I got to address the little elephant in the room. You might notice, might be noticing, hey Chris, you look a little different. Have you lost weight? And yes, I have. It's wonderful that someone noticed. And oh yeah, I did this too, but no one will notice that. And that's like, just like a little thing I did. Anyway. What I want to talk about today is Final Fantasy VII Remake, because I've just beaten it, and I've got some thoughts on it. Very quick thoughts, very brief thoughts, but to start off, I just want to say that I do not like to revisit my own work. I've kind of made that a point. I don't like to go back and look at things that I've done in years past. I like to look forward, because I view what I create. I see it so much in the editing process that any joke that I think is funny when I write it is usually never funny ever again. I've kind of gone through this YouTube career of mine under the thought process that nobody is less funny than me yesterday. The me of today is always funnier than me yesterday, and the me of today is infinitely funnier than the me of 3 years ago. But because people have been talking about Final Fantasy VII Remake, I decided to go back and watch the video I did on Final Fantasy VII 3 years ago, I think it was. And not so much to be like, oh, was I funny while I was talking about that game? I was more just trying to look at it and be like, did I have any more specific points? Because I know how I feel about that game today, but I wanted to see what exactly did I think was worthy of saying in that video 3 years ago. And, while I don't think it's particularly funny anymore, I still am pretty happy with the overall point that I was making in that video, which is that even though I personally don't think that Final Fantasy VII is the greatest game of all time, the best Final Fantasy of all time, or even the best game of 1997, I posit my overall thought on that is that such a thing could never exist anyway, because sensibilities change over time, and whatever you thought was amazing in 1997, you're not gonna think is amazing 20 years later. Like, what you're willing to put up with, what you're willing to tolerate as you get older, like, from video games is going to change. And that was the overall point I was making, and at the end of that video I said, because of that, even though I can appreciate Final Fantasy VII, and I still like Final Fantasy VII, I'm not as disappointed in the fact that some of the things in it annoyed me. And that because sensibilities change, I'm going to appreciate Final Fantasy VII Remake even more, because it's taking something that I like and modernizing it in a way. Also, at the end of that video, I teased that I was going to review Final Fantasy VIII, and I think I made it a couple hours. The game kept freezing. Like, I think I have a bad disc. One of my discs isn't that great. So the game kept freezing, and I was like, I'll deal with this some other time. And I think now that they have Final Fantasy VIII on PlayStation Network, so that might be something worth looking into maybe. But I ended up beating the Final Fantasy VII Remake before I went on to beat Final Fantasy VIII, so we're here to talk about that today. Because I did say I was going to appreciate that remake, and I guess this is my follow-up to that video. Do I appreciate Final Fantasy VII Remake? Yes, I do. I think it was a good little game. I appreciate it, although not for the reasons I thought I was going to. So if you'd have told me 3 years ago, like if you'd have gone to that unfunny me from 3 years ago and said, hey, you're playing the Final Fantasy VII Remake, you know you're going to appreciate it. Why do you think you're going to appreciate it? It's like I just said, I'm going to appreciate it because it's going to be taking something I already know is good and modernizing it. So getting rid of, making quality of life improvements, so to speak, by having a more modern take on the game. Instead, what I appreciated Remake, not because it's a modernization of Final Fantasy VII, because it really isn't, because of the plot changes they're making to it. I appreciate it just because it's a decent game, really. There's a lot to like about Final Fantasy VII Remake. At first I was worried because they're charging people $60 for what I thought was going to be not even a third of the original Final Fantasy VII, because I think, so the game ends after the fight in Shinra HQ, and that takes I want to say 7 or 8 hours, maybe, in the original Final Fantasy VII. And doing all that, this is actually an interesting little factoid, I beat Final Fantasy VII, the original, in 31 hours, mainly because I was just looking to get through it, especially towards the end. I was like, let's just get through this. I'm not chocobo breeding, I'm not doing any of that, I don't care about Knights of the Round, I just want to get through the story and get it done. And it took me 31 hours. I spent a little bit more time futzing around in Remake, just kind of going around. I did all of the side missions that are available to you. I actually spent some time looking around and trying to find different items. And it also took me 31 hours. And it was an enjoyable experience. I like that it took that extra time to flesh out characters who really weren't fleshed out in the original. Like Biggs, Wedge, and Jesse specifically are really good. I think the new takes on the characters, with the exception of Cloud, because he's still pretty much the same, the new interpretations of the characters I think are great. The fact that they get to speak and kind of have more background dialogue really adds to their character. Like, I think Barrett is phenomenal in this game. I really liked Aerith. She has a chaotic energy that I just really appreciate. Tifa was really great. The aforementioned Biggs, Wedge, and Jesse I thought were good. I think Hojo was phenomenal in this. He's an excellent sleazy villain. I really enjoyed what they did with Hojo. All of that said, I don't really want to get into spoiler territory. Not that spoiling the original Final Fantasy is anything crazy, but they made some pretty huge twists to this one, and the implications. I'm going into the future of this game a little more cautious than I am excited. I'm certainly interested to see what their plan is, but the twist in this, I didn't need. And this is my biggest takeaway. I didn't need to fight. This isn't spoiling it. You know you're gonna fight Sephiroth. I didn't need to fight him as a final boss this early, because I'm gonna be fighting him as a final. I don't know how many of these Final Fantasy VII games they plan to make. I don't need to fight Sephiroth 7 more times. I've done it. I love One Winged Angel. It's a great little tune. The new arrangement is great. I don't need to keep fighting Sephiroth, and I don't need the stakes of every game in this series of Final Fantasy VII games. I don't need to fight God every time. Just let it be small scale. This game could have easily ended with the fight against Rufus Shinra. Would it have been a great way to go out? No, because the Rufus Shinra fight is absolutely terrible. But I think that would have been overall better. To avoid this going on too much longer and getting too rambly, the overall point I want to make is that I do still appreciate Final Fantasy VII. Playing the remake, I've seen people compare them. People who like Remake versus the original game, and I don't think it's really fair to compare them, because they really do feel like, even though they're telling the same story in a way, I feel like it's almost apples and oranges really to compare the two, because they're totally different games. Their gameplay couldn't be further apart. If you want to compare Remake to Kingdom Hearts, that I will take you up on that, and I think it is better than Kingdom Hearts. Granted, I've only played the 1.5 and 2.5 collections of Kingdom Hearts. I haven't played 3, but from what I have played of Kingdom Hearts, Remake is way better. So I guess there's that for you. Let's see, is there anything else I want to go over before I wrap this up? You can't compare the two. They're very different. They're good in their own ways. Yeah, you can appreciate them for different reasons. It's almost like they're telling... It's like whether or not you appreciate two stories that are telling, like, I don't know, like a fairy tale. Like, you know, two people make a game on a grim fairy tale, let's say. And they're both really good, but they play really different. Can you really compare the two? Maybe in how the story is told, but in the overall game experience, they couldn't be further apart. So, that's all I got on Final Fantasy VII. I just wanted to get a vlog out there because... I'm not behind on scripted content, but I have a couple of things that I'm working on throughout the course of May. I'm a very, very busy boy, and I just wanted to get something out kind of in the interim. I finished up that Leica thing before we move on to the next scripted review or whatever is going to come out next based on planning how these things go. I just wanted to get this out because I beat Final Fantasy VII. I actually had something to say. Maybe one day I will do a video on Final Fantasy VIII, but that's still a little far away. So yeah, that's all I got. If you try to plug yourself without a script, oh my god, what am I supposed to do? If you liked the video, if you liked my thoughts, if you like what I do, drop a like. It really helps. Subscribe to the channel if you want to hear more thoughts on different things. If you go to the Patreon right now, and if you become a $10 patron, you can actually request me to review something that Leica series. All 3 parts of that was a Patreon request, and I'm willing to fulfill just about anything within reason. So if you want stuff like that, check out the Patreon. No obligation, and even $1 can get you something. And I got something in my ear, and it's bothering me. Oh! Sorry, other books. My new book, The Twin Universe, Book 1, The Demon Lord of Beacon City, is now available on Amazon.com. You can get a big, thick, girthy book like this with glossy cover, artwork done by my good friend Gray. She did a phenomenal job with the artwork on it. I really appreciate her for doing this. It's a very large book. It's fantasy. If you like fantasy stuff, you should check it out. Or if you're worried about Amazon workers and you don't want them going crazy delivering big, thick books like this, you can always get the Kindle version as well. It's cheaper, and it actually is better for me if you get the Kindle version, because their production costs on this are a bit high, so I don't make as much on it. So if you want to help me, a Kindle version actually helps a lot more. But if you want like a super, if you want to add to a bookshelf, yeah, you could do a lot worse than this. So links for that are going to be in the description. I think I've gone on long enough. Have fun editing this future me. That's all I got. So back to work, I guess. Bye.